The signal came on a Tuesday night. Yunji was working the late shift at the Deep Space Listening Array on Luna. It was a quiet job. Most nights, she sat alone in the control room, watching screens full of static and radio waves from distant stars. Nothing ever happened. The universe was vast and mostly empty, and humanity had learned long ago that the galaxy did not care about them. But that night was different. A red light blinked on her console, then another. Then the entire screen filled with cascading data. Yunji sat up straight. Her coffee cup fell from her hand and spilled across the floor. She did not notice. Her eyes were fixed on the screen. It was a signal, a real signal, not random noise from a dying star, not interference from a passing comet. This was structured. This was intentional. Someone somewhere was trying to communicate. Yunji's hands shook as she ran the decryption program. The signal was old. It had traveled for years across the void before reaching Earth. The source was the Andari cluster, a small collection of stars more than 4,000 light-years away. Humanity had never been there. No one had. The decryption finished. Words appeared on the screen. Yunji read them. Then she read them again. Then she picked up her communicator and called her supervisor with trembling fingers. The message was simple. It was desperate. It was a cry for help. To anyone who can hear us, we are dying. The swarm has found us. Our shields have fallen. Our fleet is gone. If there is mercy left in this universe, please help us. We are the last of the Alari. Within hours, the message had reached Earth. Within days, it was all anyone could talk about. The Alari were a small species. They had lived peacefully in the Andari cluster for thousands of years. They were scholars and artists. They had no army. They had no weapons. They believed in kindness and knowledge and the beauty of the stars. They had never harmed anyone. And now they were dying. The Devourer swarm had found them. The swarm was a nightmare that moved through the galaxy like a plague. It was a hive mind, a collective of billions of organisms that shared one purpose: to consume. They ate planets. They ate ships. They ate entire civilizations. 17 species had fallen to them. 17 worlds had gone silent forever. No one fought the swarm. It was impossible. They were too many, too fast, too hungry. When the swarm came, you ran. If you could not run, you died. The Alari could not run. Their message had reached other species first. The Trade Consortium had received it and ignored it. The Velith Dominion had received it and done nothing. The great powers of the galaxy had looked at the dying Alari and decided they were not worth saving. What could the Alari offer? They had no resources. They had no strategic value. Helping them meant fighting the swarm, and no one wanted to fight the swarm. So the galaxy turned away. The Alari would die alone, and the universe would continue as it always had. But the message had also reached Earth, and humanity was not like the others. Admiral Minu stood before the United Earth Council in the Great Chamber beneath Geneva. He was 62 years old. His hair was gray. His face was lined with the marks of a long life. He had commanded ships in 3 wars. He had buried friends. He had made impossible decisions in impossible moments. He knew what war cost. And he knew what he was about to ask. "They are calling for help," Minu said. His voice was calm and steady. "They are 4,000 light-years away. They have nothing to offer us. They cannot pay us. They cannot fight beside us. They are strangers and they are dying." The council members shifted in their seats. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked afraid. They all knew what the swarm was. They all knew what fighting it meant. "The galaxy has abandoned them," Minu continued. "Every other species has decided they are not worth saving. They have calculated the cost and the benefit, and they have chosen to let the Alari die." He paused. He looked around the room at the faces of the men and women who would decide humanity's course. "I am asking you to make a different choice." A council member named Director Park spoke up. She was old, older than Minu, and she had seen humanity nearly destroy itself in the resource wars of the last century. "Admiral," she said, "you are asking us to send our fleet against an enemy that has destroyed 17 civilizations. You are asking us to sacrifice our ships and our people for strangers we have never met. Why should we do this?" Minyu nodded. He had expected the question. "Because that is who we are," he said simply. "We are humanity. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We nearly killed ourselves a dozen times, but we always found our way back. Do you know why?" No one answered. Because when things were darkest, there were always people who stood up. People who said, "No, we will not let this happen." People who risked everything to help others. That is what makes us human, not our technology, not our weapons, our refusal to look away when someone is suffering. He pointed toward the ceiling, toward the stars beyond. "Out there they call us young, they call us reckless, they call us dangerous. They are right. We are all of those things, but we are also something else. We are the species that runs toward the fire. We are the species that answers when someone calls for help. If we ignore this message, if we let the Ilari die because saving them is too hard, then we are not worthy of the stars." The chamber was silent. Director Park studied Minyu for a long moment. Then she smiled just a little. "You always did know how to make a speech, Admiral." "I mean every word," Minyu said. "I know you do." Park looked around at her fellow council members. "I think we all know what we have to do. Let us vote." The vote was unanimous. Humanity would answer the call. Far away, in a dark bunker beneath the burning surface of Endara Prime, a young Ilari named Kale sat beside a dying transmitter. He had sent the message weeks ago, not believing anyone would hear it, not believing anyone would care. Above him, the sky was black with swarm organisms. His people huddled in the darkness, waiting for the end. The elders had stopped hopping. The children had stopped crying. There was nothing left but silence and fear. Kale kept the transmitter running anyway. He did not know why. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe it was pointless. But as long as the signal was broadcasting, there was still a chance. A tiny, impossible chance. He did not know that across the galaxy, a fleet was preparing to launch. He did not know that 200,000 humans were saying goodbye to their families, climbing into warships, and setting course for his dying world. He did not know that his signal had reached the one species crazy enough to answer. But he would learn soon enough. The humans were coming. The orbital dockyards above Mars had never been so alive. Ships filled every berth. Workers swarmed across hulls like ants, welding armor plates and loading ammunition. Engineers shouted orders. Cranes swung massive weapon systems into place. The noise was constant, a roar of industry and purpose that echoed through the void. The United Earth Expeditionary Fleet was preparing for war. Captain Yuna stood on the observation deck of her ship, the Horizon's Edge, and watched the chaos below. She was 34 years old, tall and lean, with short black hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had been a pilot since she was 19. She had never lost a ship. She had never run from a fight. And now she was leading the vanguard into the most dangerous mission in human history. Her first officer, Lieutenant Jinwoo, appeared beside her. He was younger than her, barely 30, but his mind was sharper than anyone she had ever met. He saw patterns where others saw chaos. He found solutions where others found only problems. "The fleet will be ready in 48 hours, Jinwoo said. 47 ships, 12 carriers, 200,000 personnel." Yuna nodded slowly. "And we are going up against billions of swarm organisms and a hive ship the size of a moon." "Yes," Jinwoo said. He did not try to make it sound better than it was. "What are our chances?" Jinwoo was quiet for a moment. "I have studied every record of swarm attacks, every battle, every defeat. They have never lost." "That is not what I asked." Jinwoo looked at her. A small smile crossed his face. Our chances are whatever we make them. The swarm has never fought humans before. They do not know what we are capable of. And what are we capable of? Anything, Jinwoo said simply. That is our advantage. We do not accept the impossible. Yuna almost laughed. You sound like a recruitment poster. Perhaps, but it is also true. In the engine room of the Horizon's Edge, Chief Engineer Sujin was elbow-deep in reactor components. Grease covered her hands. Sweat dripped down her face. She had not slept in 36 hours, and she did not plan to sleep for another 36. Her team worked around her, young men and women who trusted her completely. They knew Sujin could fix anything. She had once repaired a failing jump drive with nothing but spare wire and prayer. She had kept ships flying when they should have been scrap. Now she was making sure the Horizon's Edge could survive, whatever the swarm threw at them. More power to the shields, she ordered. I want them running at 120% capacity. That is beyond safe limits, one of her engineers said nervously. Sujin looked at him with tired eyes. We are going to fight a hive mind that eats planets. Safe limits do not matter anymore. What matters is that our crew comes home. The engineer nodded and got back to work. In the medical bay of the carrier Dauntless, Dr. Hana prepared for mass casualties. She was 41, small and quiet, with gentle hands and a voice that could calm anyone. She had been a doctor for 20 years. She had saved thousands of lives. She had never prepared for anything like this. We need more plasma supplies, she told her staff. More surgical units, more everything. Her assistant, a young man named Donghyun, looked overwhelmed. Where will we put it all? We will find room. We will put beds in the hallways if we have to. When those soldiers come back from the surface, they will need us. I will not let them down. Hana paused and looked at the medical records she had gathered on the Alari species. Their biology was different from humans. They were fragile creatures, with luminescent skin and delicate bones. They had evolved on a peaceful world where nothing hunted them. They had never needed to be strong. Now they were dying because of it. We will treat them too, Hana said softly. Human or Alari, it does not matter. Everyone who needs help will get it. On the troop transport Rising Sun, Sergeant Tiho briefed his Marines. They sat in rows before him, young and old, men and women from every nation on Earth. They wore combat armor and carried weapons designed to kill anything that moved. They were the best soldiers humanity had ever produced. And Tiho could see the fear in their eyes. He did not blame them. He was afraid too, but fear was just another enemy to defeat. Listen to me, Tiho said. His voice was rough, the voice of a man who had given orders in the worst places imaginable. I am not going to lie to you. This mission is dangerous. Some of us will not come home. That is the truth. The Marines were silent. But here is another truth. Down on that planet there are 300,000 people waiting to die. They sent a message into the darkness, asking for help. Everyone else in the galaxy ignored them. Everyone else decided they were not worth saving. Tiho walked among his soldiers, looking each one in the eye. We are here because we disagreed. We are here because humanity does not abandon the helpless. We are here because when someone calls for help, we answer. That is who we are. That is what we do. He stopped at the front of the room. They call us reckless out there. They call us violent and stupid and young. Maybe they are right, but I would rather be reckless and stupid than sit safely at home while innocent people die. I would rather fight an impossible battle than live with the knowledge that I did nothing. A young Marine in the front row raised her hand. Her name was G1, and she was barely 22. Sergeant, she said, what if we fail? Tiho looked at her. Then we fail trying. That is better than not trying at all. At least those people down there will know that someone cared. Someone came. They will not die wondering if the universe had forgotten them. G1 nodded slowly. The fear in her eyes was still there, but something else was there too. Something harder, something brighter. I understand, Sergeant. Good, Tiho smiled grimly. Now check your weapons. We launch in 42 hours. Admiral Minu stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Soul's Resolve. It was the largest ship in the fleet, a massive vessel bristling with weapons and armored like a fortress. It had been his home for 10 years. It held 3,000 crew members who trusted him with their lives. He would not fail them. His communications officer looked up. Admiral, we are receiving messages from across the galaxy. The Trade Consortium is asking what we are doing. The Velith Dominion says we are making a mistake. And what do they suggest we do instead? They suggest we stay home and let the situation resolve itself. Minu almost laughed. Resolve itself, they mean let the Ilari die. Yes, Admiral. Send them our response. Tell them that humanity does not abandon those in need. Tell them that if they want to stop us, they are welcome to try. The communications officer blinked. Admiral, is that wise? We might need allies later. Any ally who would let us abandon innocent people is not an ally worth having. Minu turned to look out the viewport at the fleet assembling around him. Send the message. The fleet launched 37 hours later. 47 warships, 12 carriers, 200,000 souls. They flew through the jump gate and into the unknown, toward a distant cluster of stars where a dying species waited for salvation. Across the galaxy, other species watched in disbelief. The humans were actually doing it. They were actually going to fight the swarm. It was madness. It was suicide. It was the most human thing imaginable. On the horizon's edge, Captain Yuna watched the stars blur as her ship entered hyperspace. Somewhere ahead, millions of swarm organisms waited. Somewhere ahead, a world was burning. All hands, she said into the ship's intercom. This is your captain. We are on our way. I know you are scared. I am too. But we are not alone. Every ship in this fleet carries people who believe in the same thing. That life matters, that hope matters, that we do not leave anyone behind. She paused. The Ilari do not know we are coming. They think they are going to die alone. We are going to prove them wrong. We are going to show them what humanity is made of, and we are going to bring them home. The fleet flew on, through the darkness toward the fire. They were coming. The fleet exited hyperspace at the edge of the Andari system, and every human who saw what waited for them felt their heart stop. The planet below was dying. Andara Prime, once a beautiful world of blue oceans and green forests, was now wrapped in a living shroud. Billions of swarm organisms clung to the atmosphere like a black shell. The surface was barely visible beneath them. Fires burned across the continents. Cities lay in ruins. And in orbit like a tumor floating in space was the hive ship. It was the size of a small moon. It was made of twisted metal and organic matter, fused together into something that should not exist. Thousands of smaller swarm vessels swarmed around it like flies around a corpse. The whole thing pulsed as if it were breathing. Captain Yuna stared at it from the bridge of the horizon's edge. Her hands gripped the railing so hard her knuckles turned white. By all the stars, she whispered. Lieutenant Jinwoo stood beside her, studying the tactical displays. His face was calm, but his eyes were troubled. The hive ship is the central control, he said. Destroy it, and the swarm becomes disorganized. Individual organisms without coordination. They would still be dangerous but manageable. And how do we destroy something that big? Jinwoo was quiet for a moment. I am still working on that. Admiral Minu's voice came over the fleet-wide channel. It was steady and strong, the voice of a man who had faced impossible odds before and refused to break. All ships, this is Admiral Minu. I know what you are seeing, I know how it looks, but we did not come this far to turn back. We came to save lives. We came to show the galaxy what humanity stands for. Form up on my command. We are going in. The fleet moved forward. The swarm noticed them almost immediately. A wave of attack drones launched from the hive ship, millions of them, darkening the void like a living storm. They came fast, faster than anything the humans had ever fought. Their numbers seemed endless. All ships defensive formation, Minyu ordered. Carrier groups to the center, warships on the perimeter, fire at will. The battle began. Captain Yuna led the vanguard straight into the heart of the swarm. The Horizon's Edge and her squadron punched through the first wave of drones, weapons blazing. Explosions lit up the darkness. Swarm organisms died by the thousands. But more kept coming. "We are drawing too much fire," Yuna said, watching her shields flicker. "Half the swarm is focused on us." "That was the plan," Jinwoo replied. "We draw their attention. The main fleet uses the opening to get closer to the planet. We cannot take this punishment forever." "We do not need forever, we just need long enough." The Horizon's Edge shuddered as a cluster of drones crashed into her hull. Alarms blared. Damage reports flooded in. In the engine room, Engineer Sujin shouted orders to her team. "Reroute power from non-essential systems. Keep those shields up." "We are losing hull integrity on Deck 7, someone yelled. "Then seal Deck 7. Evacuate everyone first, then seal it." Sujin wiped sweat from her eyes and bent over her console. Her fingers flew across the controls. The ship groaned around her, metal protesting under the strain, but the shields held, barely. Above the planet, Lieutenant Jinwoo's unconventional tactics began to show results. He had deployed nuclear missiles in seemingly random patterns, letting them drift among the debris fields. The swarm ignored them, focused on the human ships. Then Jinwoo detonated them. The explosions caught thousands of swarm organisms in overlapping kill zones. Entire swaths of the enemy vanished in nuclear fire. For a moment, there was an opening in the swarm, a clear path to the planet below. "Now," Yuna commanded, "drop ships, get to the surface." Sergeant Tiho felt the transport shake as it plunged into the atmosphere. Around him, his Marines gripped their weapons and prayed. The sky outside the viewports was black with swarm organisms. 10 seconds to surface," the pilot shouted. A drone slammed into the transport's wing. The ship spun wildly. Someone screamed. Tiho grabbed a handhold and held on. 5 seconds. The ship hit the ground hard. The impact threw Tiho against the wall. For a moment, everything was darkness and pain. Then he was on his feet, pulling wounded soldiers upright, kicking open the transport's door. The surface of Endara Prime was a nightmare. The sky was dark, blocked by the mass of swarm organisms above. Fires burned everywhere. The ruins of Ilari City stretched to the horizon, beautiful architecture, now nothing but rubble. And everywhere were swarm creatures. "Move," Tiho roared. "Form up and move." His Marines spilled out of the transport and formed a perimeter. Weapons fire lit up the darkness. Swarm organisms fell, but more came to take their place. They fought their way toward the bunker entrance that sensors had identified. Other transports were landing around them, disgorging more troops. Not all of them made it. Tiho saw a transport get torn apart in midair, its crew tumbling into the burning ruins below. He pushed the sight from his mind. There was no time for grief, not yet. "There," Jinwoo's voice came through his earpiece. 100 meters ahead, the bunker entrance. Tiho saw it. A massive metal door set into a hillside, half buried in rubble, the last refuge of the Ilari people. "All units converge on that position. We hold until the evacuation is complete." They reached the bunker entrance in 3 terrible minutes. By the time they got there, Tiho had lost 11 soldiers. He added their names to the list in his mind, the list he would never forget. Inside the bunker, Dr. Hana and her medical team had already arrived. They had come down on one of the first transports, ready to treat the wounded. Now they stood in the entrance of the bunker, staring at what they found. 300,000 Ilari huddled in the darkness. They were beautiful and fragile, with luminescent skin that glowed faintly in the dim light. Their eyes were large and dark, filled with fear and confusion. They had been waiting to die. They had given up hope. And now armored aliens were pouring through the entrance, shouting in a strange language, carrying weapons they had never seen. An elder Ilari pushed through the crowd. His skin was dim, his body frail. He moved slowly, supported by a younger Ilari at his side. This was Vorin, the leader of what remained of his people. He stopped in front of Tiho and stared up at him. "You came," Vorin said. His voice was weak, barely a whisper. "We sent a message and you came." Tiho removed his helmet. His face was scarred and tired, but his eyes were kind. "We came," he said simply. "We are here to take you somewhere safe." "But why?" Vorin's voice cracked. "Why would you do this? We are strangers. We have nothing to offer you. Why would you risk your lives for us?" Tiho thought about the question. He thought about his dead soldiers. He thought about his home, far away across the galaxy. He thought about what Admiral Minu had said. "Because you called for help," Tiho said, "and we heard you, that is enough." Vorin stared at him for a long moment. Then tears began to fall from his large, dark eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." Dr. Hana stepped forward, her voice gentle. "We need to start moving your people to the transports. Can you help us organize them?" Vorin nodded, still crying. He turned to his people and began to speak in his own language. Slowly, the Ilari began to move. The evacuation had begun. Above them, the battle raged on. The fleet was taking heavy losses. The carrier Dauntless was swarmed and consumed, her crew fighting to the last breath. 2 destroyers collided while evading attacks and exploded in a ball of fire. Thousands of humans died in the cold void. But they held the line. Admiral Minu watched the battle from his bridge, his face carved from stone. Every death hurt him. Every lost ship was a failure. But he could not stop now, not when there were still people to save. "How many have been evacuated?" he asked. 40,000, Admiral. The transports are running as fast as they can. 260,000 left. The fleet could not hold forever. Something had to change. Minu looked at the hive ship poolsing in the distance, the source of everything, the heart of the swarm. He made a decision. "Get me Engineer Sujin," he said quietly. "I have a question for her." The bunker had become a fortress. Sergeant Tiho and his Marines had formed a defensive perimeter around the entrance while the evacuation continued. Hundreds of Ilari refugees shuffled past them every minute, guided by human soldiers toward waiting transports. The sound of weapons fire was constant. The swarm never stopped attacking. Tiho crouched behind a barricade made of rubble and burning debris. His rifle was hot in his hands. He had lost count of how many times he had fired it. "Status report," he said into his communicator. 112,000 evacuated, came the response. "Transport ships are coming back as fast as they can." 112,000. That meant almost 200,000 Ilari were still waiting in the bunker, still trusting the humans to save them. "Keep them moving," Tiho ordered. "No stops, no delays." A swarm creature broke through the line to his left. It was a horrible thing, all claws and teeth and hunger. Tiho shot it twice and it fell. Another took its place. He shot that one too. Beside him, Private G1 was fighting with everything she had. Her face was covered in dust and blood. Her armor was cracked, but she kept firing. "Sergeant," she said between shots, "how long do we have to hold?" "Until everyone is safe." "And how long is that?" Tiho did not answer. He did not know. Inside the bunker, Dr. Hana worked without rest. The wounded kept coming, human and Ilari alike. She treated broken bones and burns and wounds she did not have names for. Her hands were steady even when her heart was racing. An Ilari child was brought to her, small and fragile, her luminescent skin flickering weakly. She had been caught in a fire. Her burns were severe. Hana knelt beside her and smiled gently. "It is going to be all right," she said, even though the child could not understand her words. "I am going to help you." She worked quickly, applying healing agents and bandages. The child's skin began to stabilize. The flickering grew stronger. An older Ilari, perhaps the child's mother, watched with tears in her eyes. She reached out and touched Hana's hand. "Thank you," she said. Her accent was strange, but the words were clear. Someone had taught her human language. Hana squeezed her hand. "Keep moving toward the transports. We will get you out of here." Elder Vorin appeared at her side. He looked even more frail than before, but his eyes were alert. "Your people are remarkable," he said softly. "They fight and die for strangers. I have never seen anything like it." "We are just doing what is right," Hana said. "No," Vorin shook his head slowly. "You are doing what is impossible. That is different." He paused. "I sent Kale to find your commander on the surface. He was the one who sent the original message. He wanted to thank him personally." "Kale?" "A young one. He never stopped hopping, even when the rest of us had given up. He kept the transmitter running until the very end." Vorin smiled sadly. "He was the one who believed someone would come." Above the planet, the space battle had reached a critical point. The human fleet was bleeding. 19 ships had been destroyed. Thousands of crew members were dead. The survivors fought on, but their ammunition was running low, their shields were failing, and the swarm kept coming. Admiral Minyu stood on the bridge of the Soul's Resolve and faced the truth. They could not win this battle. Not like this. The hive ship was too strong. It regenerated faster than they could damage it. Every wound they inflicted healed within minutes. But he had a plan. Engineer Sujin's voice came through the communicator. She had been working for hours on his request. "It can be done, Admiral," she said. "I can rig a ship's reactor to overload on impact. The explosion would be enough to destroy the hive ship's core. But there is no way to do it remotely. Someone would have to pilot the ship in." "I understand," Minyu said quietly. "Admiral, that is a suicide mission. Whoever flies that ship will not survive." "I know." Silence hung between them. "I will do it," Minyu said. "The Soul's Resolve is the largest ship we have. It will cause the most damage." "Admiral, no." Captain Yuna's voice broke in. She had been listening. "The fleet needs you. Let me take the Horizon's Edge instead." "Your ship is needed for the evacuation escort. My ship is not." "Then give the mission to someone else. You are too important." "No one is too important," Minyu said firmly. "And I will not ask anyone to do something I am not willing to do myself. This is my decision, Captain. Follow your orders." Yuna was silent, then softly, "Understood, Admiral." Minyu turned to his bridge crew. 3,000 people served on this ship. 3,000 lives that trusted him. "I will not order any of you to stay," he said. "This is a one-way mission. Anyone who wants to leave should go now. There is no shame in it." No one moved. Lieutenant Donghyun, his first officer, stepped forward. "We volunteered for this fleet, Admiral. We knew the risks. If you are going, we are going with you." Others nodded. Voices rose in agreement. Minyu felt his throat tighten. "Thank you, all of you." On the surface, the battle had become desperate. The swarm had broken through the defensive line in 3 places. Marines fell back, fighting every step of the way. Bodies littered the ground, human and swarm alike. Tiho rallied his remaining forces at the bunker entrance. Only a narrow corridor was left between the evacuation point and the endless horde of creatures. "Fall back, close ranks. Nobody gets past us." A young Marine named Diho fell beside him, his leg torn by swarm claws. Tiho grabbed him and dragged him behind cover. "Medic," he shouted, "medic here." But the medics were overwhelmed. There were too many wounded, too few hands. Then something unexpected happened. An Alari appeared beside Tiho. It was Kale, the young one who had sent the original SOS. He was thin and fragile, his luminescent skin pale with fear. He had no weapons. He had never fought in his life. But he picked up a fallen Marine's rifle with trembling hands. "Show me," Kale said. His accent was thick, but his voice was determined. "Show me how to use this." Tiho stared at him. "You do not have to fight. Get to the transports." "You came for us," Kale said. "You are dying for us. I will not run while you stand." For a moment, Tiho saw something in the young Alari's eyes. Something fierce. Something human. He showed Kale how to hold the rifle, how to aim, how to fire. "Point at the monsters. Pull the trigger. Do not stop." Kale nodded. His hands were shaking, but he raised the weapon and fired into the approaching horde. The shot went wide. He fired again. This time a swarm creature fell. Kale's eyes went wide. He fired again and again and again. Around them, the remaining Marines fought with everything they had. The night seemed endless. The swarm seemed infinite. But they held the line, minute by minute, breath by breath. 90 minutes passed. 120,000 more Alari reached the transports. The bunker was almost empty. "Last group is moving now," the evacuation coordinator reported. 2,000 remaining. "Hold on," Tiho growled. "Just a little longer." Above them, the Soul's resolve began to move. Admiral Minu sat in his command chair as his ship accelerated toward the hive ship. The swarm threw everything at him. Dozens of vessels swarmed around the flagship, clawing at the hull, trying to stop it. They were not fast enough. "Engineering reports reactor overload in 6 minutes, Donghyun said. "Understood." Minu watched the hive ship grow larger in the view screen. It was monstrous. It was terrible. It had destroyed 17 civilizations. It would not destroy an 18th. He opened a fleet-wide channel, his final message. "This is Admiral Minu of Earth. We received your call, we answered. That is what humanity does. We do not abandon the helpless. We do not bow to monsters, and we do not go quietly." He paused, thinking of his family back on Earth. His daughter who would never see him again. His wife who had kissed him goodbye and told him to come home. He would not come home, but he would make sure others could. "To the Alari, live well and remember us. To the swarm, we are humanity, and we do not forgive." The Soul's resolve hit the hive ship's core. And the universe turned white. The explosion was visible across the entire system. A wave of fire erupted from the hive ship's core, tearing through the massive structure like paper. For one impossible moment, the hive ship seemed to hang in space, held together by nothing but momentum. Then it came apart, breaking into a million burning pieces that scattered across the void. The Soul's resolve was gone. Admiral Minu and his 3,000 crew members were gone. But they had won. On the bridge of the horizon's edge, Captain Yuna watched the destruction through tears she did not try to hide. Around her, the crew was silent. Some wept openly. Others simply stared at the expanding cloud of debris that had once been the heart of the swarm. "Admiral Minu," Yuna whispered, "you did it, you actually did it." The effect on the swarm was immediate and devastating. Without the hive ship's central control, the billions of swarm organisms lost coordination. They had been a single mind, a unified force. Now they were nothing but confused animals, attacking randomly, crashing into each other, flying into debris. The remaining human ships tore through them without mercy. "All ships advance," Yuna ordered, her voice steady despite the tears on her face. "Destroy every swarm organism you can find. Protect the evacuation transports. This is not over until every Alari is safe." The fleet obeyed. Weapons fire lit up the darkness as humanity finished what their admiral had started. On the surface, Sergeant Tiho watched the sky change. The black shell of swarm organisms that had covered the planet began to thin. Creatures fell from the sky, disoriented, easy targets. The endless wave of attackers that had been pressing against the defensive line suddenly slowed, then stopped, then scattered. "What is happening?" Kale asked. He was still holding the Marine's rifle, his thin arms trembling with exhaustion. Tiho looked up at the burning sky and understood. The hive ship was gone. Someone had destroyed it. "We won," he said quietly. "Someone up there gave everything so we could win." The last 2,000 Ilari were loaded onto transports within the hour. The final wounded Marines were carried aboard. The bunker that had protected the survivors was sealed, left behind on a world that would need generations to heal. The evacuation was complete. 287,000 Ilari had been saved, nearly the entire surviving population of their species. They huddled together on transport ships, refugees from a dead world, watched over by humans who had come from across the galaxy to help them. The fleet turned toward home. The journey back was quiet. The surviving ships limped through hyperspace, their hulls scarred and their crews exhausted. 19 ships had been lost. Over 40,000 humans had died in the battle. It was the highest casualty count in human history. But no one regretted coming. Dr. Hana spent the return journey treating the wounded and comforting the grieving. She held the hands of dying soldiers and whispered words of peace. She cradled Ilari children who had lost everything and promised them they would be safe. In the crowded medical bay, Elder Vorin found her during a rare moment of rest. "Dr. Hana," he said softly, "may I sit with you?" She nodded, too tired to speak. Vorin lowered himself beside her, his fragile body moving slowly. For a long moment he was silent. "When the swarm came," he finally said, "we sent messages to every species we knew. The Trade Consortium, the Velith Dominion, the ancient empires that have existed for millions of years. We begged them for help." Hana listened. "They all refused. They calculated the cost and decided we were not worth saving. They let us die because helping us was too difficult." Vorin's voice trembled. "Then you came, young, reckless, outnumbered. You came anyway." "It was the right thing to do," Hana said simply. "Yes, it was." Vorin reached out and took her hand. His grip was weak, but his eyes were bright. "I have lived for 300 years. I have studied 1,000 civilizations. I thought I understood the galaxy. I was wrong." He paused. "Humanity is something new, something the universe has never seen before. You do not calculate cost and benefit when someone calls for help. You simply answer. That is remarkable. That is terrifying. That is beautiful." Hana squeezed his hand. "We just did what anyone should do." "No," Vorin said. "You did what no one else would. That is different." The fleet arrived at Earth 3 weeks later. The ships emerged from hyperspace above Mars, battered and broken and triumphant. Across the solar system, billions of humans watched their screens and wept. The mission had been broadcast live. Everyone knew what had happened. Everyone knew the price. And everyone knew that humanity had proven something to the galaxy. The Ilari were given a new home on one of Earth's colony worlds. It was called New Andara, a beautiful planet of forests and oceans that reminded them of what they had lost. Humans helped them build cities. Humans shared food and technology and knowledge. Humans treated them not as refugees, but as family. Within a decade, the Ilari had rebuilt their civilization. They never forgot what had been done for them. Elder Vorin addressed the Galactic Assembly, the gathering of all known species. His words were broadcast to 1,000 worlds. "We called into the void expecting silence," he said. "Instead, fire answered. The humans came. They bled for us. They died for us. Their admiral flew his ship into the heart of our enemy, knowing he would never return because he believed our lives were worth saving." Vorin paused. The assembly was utterly silent. The galaxy feared humanity because they are aggressive, because they are unpredictable, because they do not think like the rest of us. Now I understand the truth. They are dangerous not because they are violent, but because when they love, when they protect, they are unstoppable. We owe them everything, and we will never forget. On New Endara, a statue was erected in the central square of the capital city. It showed a human marine, rifle raised, standing over a fallen comrade. The marine was protecting the wounded soldier even in death. The plaque at the base read, "They heard us, they came, they stayed." Kale, now an ambassador for his people, visited the statue every year on the anniversary of the rescue. He would stand before it for hours, remembering the night when armored strangers had appeared in the bunker, remembering the moment he had picked up a rifle and fought beside them. He had been a communications officer. He had never expected to be a warrior, but humanity had taught him that courage was not about being strong. It was about standing up, even when you were afraid. Captain Yuna was promoted to admiral after the battle. She commanded the rebuilt United Earth Fleet from the bridge of a new flagship, named the Minu in honor of the man who had saved them all. When a new distress signal arrived from the far edge of known space, she did not hesitate. "All ships set course," she ordered. "We have a call to answer." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, flying toward another world in need, another cry for help, another chance to prove that humanity would never look away. In the darkness between stars, the signal kept broadcasting. It was the same message Kale had sent years ago, now repeating on a loop as a memorial. "To anyone who can hear us, we are dying. If there is mercy left in this universe, please help us." And always, always, there would be an answer. The humans were coming.